let us start by looking into one of the most popular political images. And let me see if you can recognize it. Can you recognize this event? I mean, anyone? Yeah. It's actually an image for the 9/11's bombing, attacking the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center at the heart of New York City. And I remember this event. I was young at the time, but all what I can remember is we kept watching the news for days because simply we couldn't believe this is happening at the heart of the United States of America. And the importance of this event is because it is a modern critical event that made the cultural framing and the association between Islam as a religion and violence in most Western media outlets not only justified but legitimate. In one of my introductory courses about Islam, I was discussing with the students in the Department of Theology and Religious Studies their own perceptions about Islam. And in order to push them more, I asked them actually to share their own stereotypes about Islam before the start of the module. I divided them into groups, and I believe my students were trying to play it politely. I mean, look at me, trying not to offend a Muslim lecturer. So they used the specific words in order to describe their own stereotypes about Islam. So, for example, they used the word conservative instead of saying repressive. They used the word limited freedom for women instead of saying misogynist. They referred to the connection between Islam and violence. And to be honest, I was expecting something different. I mean, remember, we are talking about the students of religious and theology studies. But actually, no. I mean, no one said something different, something unexpected. And this is happening because simply our own perception about Islam is shaped in this way. When we are talking about Islam, we just remember ISIS. We just remember Bin Laden and Al-Qaeda. And when we are thinking about Muslim women, especially women wearing hijab, we just remember them as the oppressed. So, in his book, Muhammad Ayub, The Many Faces of Political Islam, he tried to address different myths about Islam, and he tried to talk specifically about the connection between Islam and violence. And he said such an essentialization and connection between violence and Islam is not only Orientalist and reductionist in nature, but actually it has limited our own understanding to see the diversity and complexity inside Islam itself. To simplify it, this is actually one of the spectrums which I created for my master's students, just to simplify it and to give them an idea about different existing trends only when it comes to the discussion between Islam, religion, and politics. And here you can see that it's true that we have violent Islam, we have radical Islam, we have Bin Laden, ISIS, but also we have progressive critical Islam. We have also political, moderate, active Islam. And even we have a Salafi conservative Islam that is apolitical in nature. And we also have a mystical, spiritual version of Islam. But actually, we don't know much about such a diversity. We only know some stereotypes, black and white, about Islam. So, it is hardly that in most public debates, and even in our own educational curriculums in high school about religious studies, when you will find a sort of a discussion about Islam, it is hardly that we will find some ideas about the relationship between Islam and science. How Islam, for example, and how pre-modern Islamic scholars contributed to the Western Renaissance by making some translations for the Greek philosophy, for translating the work of Aristotle and Plato. So, for example, you go and study medicine, and you will never hear the name of Avicenna or Ibn Sina. And Ibn Sina is one of the philosophers. He is actually the founder of modern medicine. He was a philosopher. He was also a musician. The same can be applied to Abu Musa al-Khwarizmi. So, you go study mathematics, you go study engineering, and you go for study computer science, and you are never exposed to his name. A mathematical, he was also a historian. So you can see that how our knowledge about Islam is only shaped in black and white. When it comes to the relationship between Islam women, gender, it's far complicated. Because simply most shared assumptions about Islam, specifically women in Islam, is those women are oppressed, those women are subordinate, and those women are lacking agency. And by agency, I mean the capacity to freely pursue an action. This is a photo for Saba Mahmoud, a key Ansar apologist, who was actually studying an Islamic movement in urban Cairo, and she wrote an important book in the field of anthropology called The Politics of the Piety. Saba Mahmoud was trying through her ethnographic study to challenge many of the existing assumptions in feminist liberal theory about Islam, women, and freedom. And through such interesting book, she was trying to address different issues related to how we define agency and how we define the role of religion as a motivation of action for many women. And she, in the introduction of her book, she went to the question of the hijab. And she said that most existing sociological and anthropological literature totally obscured the religious motivation beyond wearing the hijab. The question and the notion of the piety, the religious sensibility, have been totally obscured. And I would like to add here, this sort of trying to overlook the religious dimension is happening because simply the Western secular intellectual mind is not trained in a way to acknowledge and recognize religion as a motivation of free action. So we are going to see the hijab as a source of repression for women, freedom in the public sphere. But we cannot see it as an alternative voice, as a resistance voice, as a rejectionist attitude against the sexualization and instrumentalization of women's bodies in public sphere by fashion industries and capitalism. It's very hard for us to imagine it this way. And also, again, as I discussed the Islamic pre-modern contribution, it's hardly to talk about the egalitarian nature of Quran as a main divine source of knowledge in Islam, when it comes to equality between females and males. So, in fact, there is a sort of an equality between when it comes to punishment and rewarding, regardless of the biological identity of the believer. And when there is a sort of a discriminatory regulations in the treatment of women, in fact, such discriminatory treatment is happening in a positive way in order to recognize women's biological needs. So, for example, women don't have any financial responsibilities towards their family, but they have financial rights. I think we are lucky. Women are not actually required to fast while they are menstruating, while they are pregnant and after delivery. And you can see such a positive discrimination is matching actually with many of our modern calls to humanize the public sphere in order to meet, for example, mothers' needs, in order to recognize women right for menopause leave or menstrual leave, for example. So such a connection and such a positive discrimination between many of our modern calls are not recognized in public debates, are not recognized in our religious education. And this actually will take me to a logical question that's going to come out of this talk, which is, if Islam looks that much radical, if it looks that much violent, and if it looks that much repressive as it is presented for us, why is it still the second largest growing religion worldwide? And the answer will be simply because there is no one Islam. There is actually a multiplicity of voices. There is a sort of a complexity inside such a religion, which makes it still sustaining and still fascinating till the moment. Thank you very much.